Valentine's Day is almost upon us, and today I want to talk to you about 3 self-love practices that I have found that have transformed my relationship with myself, that have given me more compassion, more confidence, more flexibility, connected me back to my spirit, and helped to tame my ego intellect so I didn't believe old stories that were no longer true. And today I'm going to share these 3 practices with you that you can put into use right now to help change your relationship with how much you love yourself, from a concept to an embodied practice. And before we go any further, hi, I'm Sonia. I'm a 4th generation intuitive, and I teach you how to plug back into your innate divine self, your intuition. If you are new here, don't forget to hit subscribe. If you're coming back, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you back. And don't forget to check out the info box below. I do have tons of tools and resources for you, including a podcast, do intuitive readings, mentoring, so definitely come pull all of the resources. So let's talk about self-love. I found that as an intuitive, empathic kid, one thing that I was really sensitive, and without having a framework around me, I often had that sensitivity be a really sneaky way of being incredibly hard on myself. I went to a French school when I was a little kid, and the French love a shame as a way to teach. And for me, between being sensitive, between growing up in an environment where spirituality was not as much in the common lexicon, growing up, psychic and psycho were very closely related. And also just not always having the framing, I found that I struggled a lot with my own self-esteem and self-love and compassion. And I knew that my spirit, which is your innate divine self that you breathe into you the moment that you are born, was gorgeous. But my little ego intellect, the stories that I told to myself, often were at odds with my own spirit, requiring a push and pull. And then even in spirituality, finding that I was even more hard on myself because I knew better. So I went on my own self-love journey. And the very first tool that I have found that has been invaluable in my own self-love practice is, first, make realistic promises to yourself that you follow through on. For me, what I would find is that my ego intellect would often mask as perfectionism as spirituality. So, for example, if I would want to meditate or do spiritual practices or go to the gym or whatever, my ego intellect would make this a very complicated thing. Be like, you have to do this every single day for X amount of time, and otherwise you are failing. So at the very beginning, I would show up, and by the end of the week, I would peter out. And those promises that I made to myself, I did not follow through on. And instead of having a reframe of like, maybe I'm overreaching and this is a little too much, I instead would often say that this is me not trying hard enough, that I'm not good enough. Of course, I can never follow through, which would then seed beliefs in my subconscious that weren't true. Instead of that, it was outside of my real life capacity, I often then would tell myself that I could never do things, I could never complete, feeling that this shame would be a good motivator. But it's never a good motivator. Shaming yourself, you will often get results in the short term, but in the long term, it's like death by a million paper cuts. So first, make promises to yourself. What is realistic? Instead of having to meditate every single day for 20 minutes and then do yoga and then a journaling practice, be simple. Instead, how many times in this week, and especially if it's something new that you have capacity for? I always started with 3 times a week and then would make those promises. And just like brushing my teeth, each time it felt good before and after. And each time I made that promise and followed through, whether it was a spiritual practice, whether it was in setting boundaries, whether it was going to bed on time, those little promises helped to teach my ego intellect to trust my spirit. Your ego intellect wants to help. And so when we make promises that we follow through on, it helps to teach our human parts that we are dependable. Our ego intellect often feels like it's driving the bus all by itself. And when we constantly disappoint ourselves by setting goals that are too lofty or not following through, what we're really teaching our human parts is that we can't trust ourselves. So this simple practice is revolutionary. Follow through on those different promises and make them simple. The second thing that really helped to revolutionize my own self-love practice is self-compassion. Now, like I said, often we like to use shame as a motivator. And often our ego intellect feels that if we let go of shame as a way to motivate ourselves, for example, with my last practice, I'm going to work out every single day. I didn't work out every single day. My ego intellect would be like, you're bad. You could never do this. This is terrible, blah, 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 eroding away in my self-confidence. But self-compassion comes in as a whole new revolutionary way to practice being gentle with ourselves. Often, first thing that happens, our ego intellect starts barking loud. It might say, you know, you didn't follow through on your gym practices. You could never do that ever again. Then we can really creatively and compassionately start to listen to the ego. When the ego makes big things and says alarm, alarm, danger, 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 often it's trying to tell us something, but it's not using good language. So when we can practice listening to underneath the surface to our ego, saying, thank you so much for trying to alert me. What are you trying to protect me from? What do you need from me? Thank you so much for trying to help. This can first change that internal conversation from that there's something inherently wrong to I can connect to my spirit, listen to what underneath the surface of being sad. And then we can be compassionate, saying even sometimes I'll talk out loud to myself, Sonia, you're doing a good job. Sonia, that was really tough. I can feel that you're disappointed. You're trying really hard. I'm super proud of the ways that you've shown up. When we can practice self-compassion, first, we are not only more compassionate with ourselves, we're compassionate with those around you. The ego intellect likes to believe that it knows what is a good person. It likes to know, and with that, what it does is it likes to compare ourselves to other people. Oh, I'm more spiritual. I do more blah, 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 compared to X, Y, or Z. That makes us feel better for a moment, but it's a false sense of confidence. And so when we can instead have it be a system of constantly comparing, like the ego intellect, to compassion, to kindness, to recognizing when we're having a hard time and offering ourselves the comfort and love that we so need, that is my favorite self-love practice. Just recently, I had an evening where I had a beautiful evening and then it ended in disappointment. My ego intellect wanted to go black, white, right, wrong, all or nothing, saying everything was ruined. Now, I listened to my ego intellect and thought, and just even sitting with my feelings compassionately, instead of getting into the story that it was all or nothing, I sat with my spirit and I thought, you know what? My human parts are disappointed. And from there, I could offer compassion. Yes, I am so sorry that the evening did not turn out the way that you wanted to. That's really hard. I can feel that you're struggling with disappointment. I'm going to make you a cup of tea. And why don't we tuck you into bed and watch Cinderella? Just like I would do for somebody that I loved very much. When we practice self-compassion and start to put those practices into play, our capacity not only for ourselves, but others widens. And the interesting thing about self-compassion, the ego intellect will often think, oh, I will let myself off the hook if I don't use this shame, these ways of motivating. But in reality, the more that we're self-compassionate really means that we allow ourselves to self-examine, holding us not only more to account in a way that helps us grow, but also helps us to extend that compassion to others around us. When really we recognize that we are trying our best and others are trying their best as well, that creates a new interchange instead of feeding ego stories like I'm all by myself, I can't count on anyone, I can't count on myself, that create change. So practice self-compassion. Think about how you receive compassion. Is it words of affirmation? Is it physical touch? Is it reassurance? Get clear so you have your toolkit prepared in the interim. And the third thing that really helped me with my self-love practice was a tool that I often recommend to my mentoring clients, that I've recommended to my reading clients, and one that really changed how I saw myself. And this practice is writing down 3 things that you love about yourself, 3 things that you're grateful for, and 3 things that you're proud of every day. I usually like to write it on a Post-it note, fold it up, and put it into a jar for at least 30 days. When we have something inherently called the negativity bias. And the negativity bias will often look at what we are not doing right and then be hard. And that can often distort our sense of self. And especially I find that people who are drawn to spiritual interpersonal work can often have this place of, like I said, perfectionism masquerading as spirituality being incredibly hard. When we can start to create that lens and start to see ourselves and our spirit and start to affirm that instead of looking to others for permission and validation, we start to pull that thread back to our innate divine self. I know who I am. I know what I love about myself. I know what I'm capable of. And it doesn't have to be complicated. 3 things that I'd say that I love about myself is, I love my sense of humor. I love my compassion. I love my play. I'm proud of all sorts of stuff. I'm proud of my new art that I'm working on in my kazooing. I'm proud of showing up to my movement practices. I'm proud of feeding myself with healthy food and feeding my spirit every day. These are certain things. I am grateful for my pillow. I am grateful for my yoga mat. I am grateful for my journal. These are really simple things. Make it simple. And if you're really struggling with this, you can even start with even just acknowledging. If you're having a hard time, let's say with your physicality and are hard on your body, instead of just saying, oh, I have to love my body and love myself, which might feel like a stretch, we could even just say, I love my body for helping it to sustain me. I love that I'm showing up to these. I love that I'm trying with curiosity and growth. Make them true instead of make them things that you have to do. The more that we can create these practices, the more that we start to see ourselves through a different lens that helps us with our self-esteem, our self-worth, our availability, and starts to help to shift that negativity bias from what's not working to what is. And there, coupled with those promises and that self-love and self-compassion, means that whatever is in front of us, we know that we can tackle and that we can create change. So I really hope that these practices help you. I would really encourage you, even just try one and see how it works. So I'm sending you all my love. You are a bright spirit and we need your light. And just as my Nana always said, you cannot improve upon your spirit. All you can do is allow more of it. And these practices will help you do just that. So last but not least, if you're curious about working with me, you can book a soul reading, find out your soul purpose, get your specific questions answered, see what's blocking your way over at my website, soniatully.com. Or if you're interested in mentoring, I do one-on-one and you can book a free 15-minute discovery call. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have a favorite self-love practice, leave it for me in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you and I will see you next week. Bye.